So right here, we will examine the arguments made by Stephen A. Smith and his former co-host Max Kellerman to assess the claim and the charge that Stephen A. Smith is some sellout or coon. And the reason that he got rid of Max Kellerman is because Max Kellerman was too woke and used to cook him in the social political commentary type of debates. We're going to analyze that and assess whether or not Stephen A. Smith is just some sellout of sorts.
Black folks lament all the time. We totally support protests. We are protesters. We got a lot to protest about. But when you riot, particularly in your own community, in the past I'm talking about, why is that something that we've lamented? Because when the fire stops burning and the damage has been done and you've done it in your own community, where do you go from there?
It's better not to riot. I'm not pro-riot, okay? Let me be very clear about that off the top.
I'm not saying that. I just brought that up.
Rioting in their own communities, black people don't own those communities. They don't own those communities. And this culture has been rioting against black people for hundreds of years now.
That wasn't my point.
Now, the reason that I don't like Max Kellerman's argument, because even though he would say it's not to justify the riot, but I don't understand why you make that argument if you're not trying to justify it. Pointing out that black people don't own those businesses or don't own those communities. They do own some of the businesses. They don't own nearly enough. That much is true. But to make that argument, even if we said 100% that, let's say, black people owned all the businesses in the black community, it would still be a ownership class and a consumer class. So the people that are doing that rioting, they would still be more or less in the same position. It would just be a non-black person who could potentially offer them a minimum wage job at one of those businesses in that community. Or it would, in the new scenario, it would be a black person who could potentially offer them around a minimum wage job at one of the businesses in that community. But either way it go, they would, the people that are doing the rioting will ultimately be in the same exact situation. And if black people owned all of those businesses, it would just be a larger black boule upper class who that same group that's doing the rioting would call coons and would lump them in with the powers to be, the structure that's oppressing them or not reaching down enough to help them. So it's something in the culture that has to be fixed. And talking about the reasons for rioting, and the country has been rioting against them and all of that, that is just some wokeism trying to justify bad behavior. I think Stephen A's position on that was more along the lines of where of how you make an objective argument or objective stance on it. But him being black, he gets called the coon or the sellout for it. And then Max is praised as, the woke hero.
You had an opportunity to show up for a workout. And oh, by the way, you showed up in a Kunta Kinte shirt. That's what you did for owners that you want to play for. Now, whether you like it or not, the bottom line is they're owners in the league with the ability to employ you. When you want a job, these are not things that you do.
Who cares if he's wearing a Kunta Kinte t-shirt? Like, is our original sin in this country slavery, yes or no? Is that the reason that 31 of the 32 owners are white, yes or no? Because of the power structure, yes or no? Yes, of course it is. That's the very thing that's related to the reason Kaepernick was protesting in the first place. So what if he shows up with the Kunta Kinte t-shirt?
If you want to dress the way that you want to dress, you need to practically own the place, or bare minimum be the boss at some level, in some way, or in some form. If you just wish to be an employee, and if that's what you're competing for or looking to do, just be an employee, then by all means you have to adjust to the culture of the company that you wish to work for or that you're working for. Clearly Max Kellerman understands that, but when it comes to somebody going against those normal cultural, socially accepted norms in a way to where he has no skin in the game, but he's encouraging other people to do things to their own personal detriment and advocate for it, but it doesn't have any exact effect on him or people of his ilk of any way, shape, or form. So that's where it's something very, very pandering or patronizing about that, to where and condescending may be the right word when he says, so what if he wants to do that? I'm sure there's a reason why Max Kellerman didn't show up for work on his first day at ESPN or to the job interview with a spiked punk rock mohawk there's a reason why. You adjust to the culture of the company that you wish to work for. But if you're eccentric and you're the type of personality type, you go against certain cultural norms, you can work your way into a position to where you could be more of yourself, or you can build and create it yourself and be more of yourself. But otherwise, to not do either of those things and say, I'm going to go into a suit and tie place and push the envelope and show up in a tank top and flip flops, that's just ridiculous.
I'm only speaking about recreational use of marijuana. I think it's abhorrent. I think it's ridiculous, and I don't support it at all in terms of the NBA legalizing it. I don't believe that a paying customer should take money out of their hard-earned money out of their pockets to patronize an NBA product, to walk to a game and see some dudes walking up courtside high. I don't believe that.
This is not about showing up to the game high. No one is saying the players should be high when they play. Because there are examples of players who've shown up high, that's a reason to outlaw recreational use on someone's own time. It's absurd on its face.
Now, there's actually a fair amount of nuance in that one, because if you're allowed to drink alcohol on your own personal time, and alcohol is legal, and then in many states marijuana is legal, the argument is you should be able to smoke marijuana on your free time. It's just you're not allowed to show up to the game high, and you're not allowed to show up to the game drunk. But I'm pretty sure there are people who probably show up to the game after having a few drinks earlier that day. I think what that ultimately comes down to, and there could be a racial element with this one, that they really don't trust the NBA players to where if they say that you're allowed to smoke weed, we're not going to drug test you. Just smoke it on your own time at night on your day off when you don't got a game that day and we already have practice and shoot around. You can go ahead and casually smoke just like you can probably casually drink. The problem there is that they don't trust that the NBA players won't show up high, and it's hard to police it unless they just show up just completely wasted. So their view on it is that we're going to be dealing with players that are ultimately going to be they're going to be high during the game, and they don't trust them, and it could be a racial element there. So I do understand but I still understand the league drawing a hard line saying that, nope, we're just not going to allow it altogether. We're just going to draw a hard line against it. We're going to do drug tests and everything regularly. It is a fair argument to be made on both sides of that one. But a somewhat simple solution is to make it to where they're allowed to do it, police them firmly in the event that they show up going off of some marijuana. That's one way to do it. The other way is ban it outright. I don't think there's no exact correct answer, especially when you average it to the equation that alcohol does more harm to your body than marijuana. So that's one where we're in a weird nuanced situation, but a lot of people are basically saying that Stephen A is ultimately the sellout or the coon, because he's saying, nope, keep a hard, firm rule, absolutely no-go rule on the marijuana. Or as he always says,
stay off the weed.
And this all came to a head when, after everything that has been discussed, the infamous statements by Terrell Owens, when he ultimately said that Max Kellerman was blacker than him, because Max Kellerman did toe the line when it comes to the more woke position on things.
He wanted was transparency for people to see the full workout, to see the full Colin Kaepernick. Again, you mentioned obviously Max is going to get in here, and like I said, I'm in the streets. Max almost seems blacker than you, Stephen A. with what he's coming, with his commentary.
It is rumored that those moments right there are the reasons that Max Kellerman is no longer co-host on ESPN First Take. My issue with what Terrell Owens was saying is that when he's saying Max Kellerman is blacker than you, Stephen A., that is to imply that there is one way of being black. There's one way of thinking black. We must be a monolith. We must think the same way. No, we are allowed to be. We may not be unique, because a lot of us probably do think alike, to the point to where somebody deviates from the normal line of thinking, then they get called not black. But no, I would argue, I would submit to the conversation that there are many ways to be black, or black is what you are, but it does not have to influence and dictate your position on everything in terms of the party line. You don't have to look to the Borg hive mind of blackness to figure out what you should think about something. And when black people who draw their own conclusions outside of what is the normal socially accepted norm, they get called non-black. And I don't like that. I'm not feeling that at all. And I don't like the idea of somebody being considered a coon or a sellout, because what Stephen A does, and he does take ultimately the side of blackness or wokeness on some issues, but then there are many issues where he I think gives a pretty hard down the middle objective analysis. And I noticed that when you draw hard lines, you give objective analysis, you try to stick to what's logical and what makes sense, and you don't include any emotional arguments or emotional appeals, because I was noticing a lot of that from Max Kellerman, and that was getting called black. But when you keep your emotions out of it and try to just have a strict, almost religious adherence to the facts and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, oh, you selling out, or you not being black. I don't like that. So that's why I didn't really care for what Terrell Owens says, and I don't really care for everybody who calls Stephen A. Smith a coon, because I think when it comes to the social issues and the political issues and all of that, I think he's right in the middle. And there's nothing wrong with a black man being right in the middle. But when a black man is right in the middle, he gets called not black. And that's whack. Yes, I did do the most corny rhyme ever at the end. But let me know what y'all think in the comment section. We out of here. Peace.